Hi everyone, thanks for joining. So we're going to have a bit of a change from the lively Wayfarer et al. Cases today. I've been wanting to go through this case for a while. So someone sent me this is an amended complaint from the Macrons. I haven't covered the original complaint or any responses to it. But this is an amended complaint. It was filed in September. And I skimmed it and I thought, wow, do you know, that's really interesting and I'm actually curious. My kind of position with the whole, I didn't really watch Candace Owens, her series on Brigitte Macron. My kind of personal position is, I suppose it's a legal perspective, is looking at a photo of someone and assuming that that person, as a child, is the same this person as an adult, especially when they're siblings, is that it's not conclusive enough for me. And I know there was probably other things, but so I'm kind of got an open mind. Like I'm open to the fact that Candace Owens may be onto something, but I'm equally open to the possibility that she's got it wrong. And that's where my interest lies in reading this lawsuit, I guess. It is a really long lawsuit, so hopefully everyone will, be comfortable. Got your popcorn and your coffee and everything else. Okay. I want to just say as well, because credit to the attorneys for the Macrons, right? Where the attorneys have a really, really prestigious record, I do like to sort of comment on that as well. So the Macrons are represented by a firm called Clare Locke, which is one of the best defamation law firms in the world, and they actually took on Fox News. They represented Dominion. You remember the voting systems, and Fox News were making sort of statements on their news shows that the voting was rigged. And Clare Locke represented Dominion, took on Fox News and won a massive $787.5 million. And that's just with Fox News. Clare Locke is also representing Dominion against other defendants such as Newsmax, One America News Network, Sidney Powell, one of Trump's former lawyers, Rudy Giuliani, we all know who he is, My Pillow, and the CEO of My Pillow, Patrick Byrne. So there's a lot going on there, and they've also won cases against the New York Times, which, if anyone's been following what I do with the Lively case, you will see how actually hard that is to score any kind of a win against the New York Times. But Clare Locke has done it. All right, let's go into the complaint. So this is, like I say, this is going to be a long one. This is 250 plus pages, and I will be reading. My knowledge, as far as because this is obviously this is a case. It's filed in the State Superior Court of the State of Delaware. It does involve French plaintiffs. So obviously Britain was part of the EU, so my knowledge of EU law is really good. If anything that's like domestic French, I would have to read up the same as I do with American law. Right. Okay. So, in March 2024, Candace Owens, a right-wing podcaster, told the world she would stake her entire professional reputation on the fact that Brigitte Macron, the First Lady of France is in fact a man. Since then, Owens has used this false statement to promote her independent platform, gain notoriety, and make money. Owens disregarded all credible evidence disproving her claim in favor of platforming known conspiracy theorists and proven defamers. And rather than engage with President and Mrs. Macron's attempts to set the record straight, Owens mocked them and used them as additional fodder for her frenzied fan base. Just for a heads up, by the way, guys, I forgot to say there may be a bit of background noise because there are people in my home, so I apologise for that. I'm in the quietest place I can find. Okay. Owens did not stop there, retaliating against the Macrons for the audacity of sending her a retraction demand. Owens helmed an 8-part podcast series entitled Becoming Brigitte and accompanying ex-posts. Throughout the series, Owens and her entities Candace Owens LLC and George Tom Inc. Endorsed, repeated, and published a series of verifiably false and devastating lies about the Macrons on which this complaint is based. These outlandish, defamatory, and far-fetched fictions included that Mrs. Macron was born a man, stole another person's identity, and transitioned to become Brigitte. Mrs. Macron and President Macron are blood relatives committing incest. President Macron was chosen to be the President of France as part of the CIA-operated MKUltra program or a similar mind control program, and Mrs. Macron and President Macron are committing forgery, fraud, and abuses of power to conceal these secrets. But Owens has taken it even further. Since the Macrons filed this action on July 23, 2025, Owens has unequivocally doubled down. She has continued to use her podcast to expand her lies about the Macrons, sell merchandise, making fun of the Macrons, and collect donations based on her reporting on the Macrons. Owens, with full knowledge of this lawsuit, launched a new season of Becoming Brigitte in September 2025, in which she makes absurd claims that Mrs. Macron, as Jean-Michel, participated in the Stanford prison experiment, which Owens claims is somehow linked to her later transition. Owens has also gone so far as to suggest that the Macrons are involved in an alleged conspiracy to distract Owens from investigating Charlie Kirk's assassination. Okay. These claims are demonstrably false, and Owens knew they were false when she published them. Yet she published them anyway, and the reason is clear. It is not in the pursuit of truth, but the pursuit of fame. After being fired from the Daily Wire, Owens used these demonstrably false claims to promote her independent podcast, Candace. Owens' fan base has grown to 7.2 million followers on X and 5.21 million subscribers on YouTube. The most popular podcasts in the world have discussed her investigation into the Macrons' history. She launched a revamped website, CandaceOwens.com, fueled by her desire to make these specific false claims about the Macrons without adhering to content moderation policies. This is nothing new for Owens. She has built a brand on provocation, not truth. Owens labels herself as an independent investigative journalist while routinely peddling misinformation under the guise of legitimate reporting. She has promoted a range of conspiracy theories, including anti-vaccine falsehoods, long debunked anti-Semitic tropes such as blood libel and Holocaust distortion, going so far as to dismiss the atrocities of Joseph Mengel's medical experiments as mere propaganda. Wow, that's wild. I did not know that. Her content is not intended to inform, but to inflame and attract attention through sensationalism and conspiracy theories. Owens published a series and related ex-posts with reckless disregard for the truth. Owens was repeatedly presented with credible, verifiable evidence disproving her claims, including documentation, public records, and direct outreach from the Macrons. Instead of correcting the record, she doubled down. At the time, Mrs. Macron had won French defamation claims against others who pushed these same baseless theories, underscoring both their falsity and defamatory sting. Owens knew this, yet Owens, fully aware of the truth, has not only declined to retract her statements, but has actively expanded on them. These lies have caused tremendous damage to the Macrons. Defendants have subjected the Macrons to a campaign of global humiliation, turning their lives into fodder for profit-driven lies. Owens has dissected their appearance, their marriage, their friends, their family, and their personal history, twisting it all into a grotesque narrative designed to inflame and degrade. The result is relentless bullying on a worldwide scale. Every time the Macrons leave their home, they do so knowing that countless people have heard and many believe these vile fabrications. It is invasive, dehumanizing, and deeply unjust. Faced with this relentless and unjustified smear campaign, the Macrons are left with no choice but to seek relief through this court to set the record straight, prevent further harm, and hold defendants accountable for their conduct. And one thing I will say is if that the theory that Candace Owens is pushing is not true, then the Macrons are absolutely right. The global humiliation that this would be causing would be like nothing. There's nothing I could even compare it to. Okay. So I probably should just say as well, there's going to be a lot of French names or French terms, I think, through this as well. I am not good at French, so I may butcher them. Hopefully I'll do my best. Okay, parties and relevant non-parties. Plaintiff Emmanuel Macron is a French citizen. President Macron has been the president of France since 2017. Prior to being elected, President Macron served as Minister of Economics, Industry and Digital Affairs and Deputy Secretary General to the President. President Macron married Brigitte Macron in 2007. Plaintiff Brigitte Macron is a French citizen, the spouse of the current President of France and a woman. She was born Brigitte Trogneux in Amiens, France, on April 13th, 1953. She is the youngest of 6 children. She gave birth to 3 children from her first marriage to André Louis Ozier. Mrs. Macron is a former teacher. In 2007, she married Emmanuel Macron. Defendant Candace Owens is a citizen of the United States and resident and domiciliary of the state of Tennessee. Through her marriage to George Thomas Style Farmer, a British citizen, Owens also holds British citizenship. Owens is considered a political commentator and is a self-described conservative. Owens hosts a podcast called Candace, which is published on Owens' X account by Candace Owens LLC, on CandaceOwens.com by George Tom Inc., and across various other platforms. Owens is a member and the sole manager of defendant Candace Owens LLC. Owens maintains control of defendant George Tom Inc. Defendant Candace Owens LLC is a limited liability company organized under the laws of the state of Delaware with its headquarters in Nashville, Tennessee. Candace Owens is the sole manager of Candace Owens LLC. The company manages Owens' Facebook and X accounts, and Owens oversees and directs all content published on her social media account. She disseminated her false and defamatory statements through Candace Owens LLC. Candace Owens LLC is a pass-through entity named after Owens, which is solely controlled and managed by her. It is the legal entity through which Owens operates and manages her social media accounts. Owens has primary control over the management of Candace Owens LLC. Defendant George Tom Inc. is a registered for-profit corporation organized under the laws of the state of Delaware with its headquarters in Nashville, Tennessee. Owens made false and defamatory statements on her podcast, Candace, and published them on her website, CandaceOwens.com, which is operated by George Tom Inc. Owens oversees and directs all content that George Tom Inc. publishes on CandaceOwens.com. Owens is a member or manager of George Tom Inc., and she has primary control over the management of George Tom Inc. Non-party Jean-Michel Trogneux is the older brother of Brigitte Macron. Jean-Michel was born in Amiens, France on February 11, 1945, and he still lives there today. And I believe that's the brother that Candace Owens was alleging Brigitte Macron really was. Non-party Xavier Poussard is an investigative journalist and editor of La Lettre de Xavier Poussard. I'm no good with French. He was part owner of a document, a confidential newsletter that published false and defamatory claims regarding plaintiffs similar to those stated by defendants. Owens claims the writings by Xavier Poussard inspired her false and defamatory claims. Poussard is Owens' primary source. Non-party Natasha Ray is an investigative journalist who has also spread the same false and defamatory claims about the Macrons. Ray originated the claims in France. As a result, Mrs. Macron prosecuted a libel case in France against both Natasha Ray and Amandine Roy. Ray is a key source for Owens and Poussard. Non-party Amandine Roy is a self-proclaimed spiritual medium who interviewed Ray in 2021 for a since-deleted YouTube video. In 2021, in a 4-hour interview, Roy and Ray broadcast false and defamatory claims regarding Mrs. Macron, which prompted her libel claim in France. Roy is a leading source for Owens and Poussard. Jurisdiction. I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but basically the court has subject matter jurisdiction over this civil action, and the venue is proper in this court under Delaware law. And then it says the court has personal jurisdiction over Candace Owens. Has jurisdiction over Candace Owens because she transacts business and performs work, etc. The company is incorporated and formed under Delaware law. There's a whole host of reasons, basically. But essentially, they're saying, well, you have jurisdiction. Delaware has jurisdiction over Candace Owens LLC, George Tom Inc., all for pretty much the same reasons. Okay, factual allegations. President Macron rose to power in France, embodying a modern, dynamic image of leadership that resonates with many citizens. Okay. President Macron was born on December 21st, 1977 in Amiens, France. From an early age, he demonstrated intellectual curiosity and emotional sensitivity, nurtured in large part by his close bond with his maternal grandmother, Manette, a school teacher who introduced him to literature and progressive political ideals. President Macron attended La Providence, a Jesuit high school in Amiens, where he first met Brigitte Macron, a French and drama teacher. At the time, Mrs. Macron was an accomplished educator and mother of 3. Their early interactions were centered around academic mentorship and the shared passion for literature and theatre. On April 13th, 1953, in Amiens, France, Mrs. Macron was born Brigitte Trogneux, a woman. She was the youngest of 6 teachers. She was the youngest of 6 children in a prominent chocolate-making factory in Amiens. An image of her birth announcement and family photo featuring Mrs. Macron as a child is below. Let's just bring it up. So this is her birth announcement here. So this is Anne-Marie, Jean-Claude, Mary Yvonne, Monique, et Jean-Michel. Basically, big announcement of their little sister, Brigitte. Okay, and here she is circled here. And I think this little boy that's on the left here in the check shirt could be Jean-Michel. Okay, Mrs. Macron married her first husband, André-Louis Ozier, in 1974 when she was 21. They had three children, Lawrence, Sebastian, and Tiffany. I'm not sure if I've pronounced that right. A photo from Mrs. Macron's and Mr. Ozier's wedding is below, so I'll just zoom in on that. I mean, it's not the clearest because it's black and white. Mrs. Macron began her career teaching in Paris and Strasbourg before joining La Providence in early 1990s. There, she taught French and directed the school's theatre workshop. Through the school's theatre program, President Macron and Mrs. Macron formed a deeper intellectual connection. During a school production of Jacques and his Master, President Macron played the lead role under Mrs. Macron's direction. He later undertook an ambitious rewrite of another play, The Art of Comedy, to create roles for more students. Mrs. Macron agreed to guide him, and the two began meeting regularly to collaborate on the project. At all times, the teacher-student relationship between Mrs. Macron and President Macron remained within the bounds of the law. But when President Macron's parents became aware of his strong feelings for his teacher, they decided to transfer him to Lycée Henri IV in Paris. Mrs. Macron encouraged him to leave, and he was confident he would fall in love with a peer. Yet, before his departure, he told her, "Whatever you do, I will marry you." Okay. I'm going to give up reading the names of the schools. There's so much French in here. Okay, so he completed his studies, went on to earn a degree in philosophy, followed by a master's degree in public affairs, and then carried on. After graduating, he began his career as a finance inspector at the French Ministry of Economy and Finance. Over the years, President Macron and Mrs. Macron kept in touch and their love deepened. In 2006, Mrs. Macron divorced her first husband, and in 2007 she married President Macron. Their relationship has remained strong and supportive, marked by a deep intellectual partnership. In 2008, President Macron joined Rothschild as an investment banker, where he achieved notable success. His public service career resumed in 2012 when he joined President Francois Hollande's administration as Deputy Chief of Staff and Economic Advisor. In 2014, he was appointed Minister of the Economy, where he implemented key economic reforms, later known as the Macron Law. As Hollande's popularity declined amid economic difficulties and rise in nationalism, President Macron began distinguishing his platform from that of the sitting administration. He recognized the need for a new centrist movement to address the challenges of the moment. In 2016, he founded the political movement En Marche, which he described as a democratic revolution. Later that year, he resigned from his ministerial post and declared his candidacy for president. His campaign emphasized pro-European centrist policies and quickly gained national momentum. Mrs. Macron joined her husband on the campaign trail, acting as a central figure and key advisor to his campaign. Following the first round of elections in April 2017, President Macron publicly credited Mrs. Macron for his success, saying, "Without her, I wouldn't be me." He went on to win the presidency in May 2017. It's amazing because they do sound like they have a very sweet, kind of relationship. It seems very loving, and yet I can't get that image of her kind of shoving him in the face on that plane out of my mind. I suppose I would do that to my husband if I need to. I wouldn't. I'm joking. I adore my husband. Okay. Upon assuming office, President Macron formally established an official unpaid role for the First Lady. In this capacity, Mrs. Macron represents France in diplomatic settings, supports charitable causes, and engages in initiatives related to education, health, disability, and child protection. Her responsibilities are supported by an advisory cabinet and 2 presidential aides. Mrs. Macron is a strong, independent woman who has consistently forged her own path. Throughout her life, she has refused to be confined by societal expectations or limited by traditional roles. As First Lady of France, she has made deliberate, thoughtful choices rooted in conviction and purpose. Far from merely supporting her husband from the sidelines, Mrs. Macron has been an active and engaged partner, respected for her intellect, influence, and refusal to simply do as she is told. Her life and work embody a commitment to education, civic engagement, and personal agency. Brigitte Macron is the target of a vicious conspiracy crafted by those threatened by her influence. Around March 2021, Natasha Ray, who describes herself as an independent journalist, published on her now deleted Facebook profile false and defamatory claims alleging that Mrs. Macron is a transgender woman perpetrating identity theft. These baseless allegations initially failed to attract significant public attention, but that changed when Ray began working with Xavier Poussard. In May 2021, Poussard began publishing a multi-issue series entitled The Mystery of Brigitte Macron. That series recycled and expanded on numerous falsehoods, including the defamatory insinuations regarding Mrs. Macron's alleged biological sex, allegations later amplified and expanded on by Owens. In September 2021, Ray collaborated with Broussard to co-author a publication in Fait et Document, a fringe magazine reportedly influential within far-right circles in France. Okay. On December 10th, 2021, Ray appeared on the YouTube channel of Amadine Roy. Oh, it's going to get confusing, isn't it? Ray and Roy. A self-described spiritual medium. Roy conducted a 4-hour interview with Ray, during which Ray reiterated the defamatory claims that Mrs. Macron was in fact born as a male named Jean-Michel Drognot, which is the actual name of Mrs. Macron's brother, who stole the identity of Brigitte Drognot. They also claim that Mrs. Macron's first husband never existed and that she did not carry her 3 children. The video quickly went viral, amassing more than 450,000 views before it was removed by YouTube. In December 2021, the hashtag Jean-Michel Drognot began trending on X, with users pointing to the fact that there are few public photos of Mrs. Macron from her youth and that she often hides her neck as proof she is transgender. From that point forward, the false narrative was amplified by prominent far-right influencers in France. In September 2024, a French court held that Ray and Roy defamed Mrs. Macron for spreading false rumours that Mrs. Macron was born Jean-Michel Drognot and later stole the identity of Brigitte Drognot. The defamation suit confirmed that Ray and Roy's claims that all documents related to Mrs. Macron's birth, marriage, divorce, and childbearing were forged to conceal her actual sex were false. Jean-Michel participated in the trial. Ray and Roy were fined €500 and ordered to pay €8,000 to Mrs. Macron and €5,000 to her brother in civil damages. As a footnote, an interim appellate court overturned the judgment on July 10th, 2025, and the case is now on appeal to France's highest court, the Court of Cassation. Importantly, the appellate court did not overturn the judgment on the basis that the statements were true, but on other grounds. Mrs. Macron firmly believes that all the statements included in the proceeding are false and defamatory, and that the highest court will uphold her claims. Okay, so that court win was overturned. I don't know what the reasons were, but that does not translate to, the allegations that Brigitte Macron is transgender are true. There may have been a legal technicality that the judgment was overturned on. Okay. After multiple victories against Ray and Roy at home in France, the Macrons thought these false claims had been put to bed. But as discussed below, Owens turned this flame into a fire. Owens is a far-right conspiracy theory who thrives on making outrageous claims, prioritizing shock value and follower growth over truth or responsible discourse. Okay. Owens did not always espouse extreme right-wing ideals. She was born in White Plains, New York, and raised in Stamford, Connecticut. Owens graduated from Stamford High School in 2007 and attended the University of Rhode Island before leaving due to financial issues. Following her departure from university, Owens completed an internship at Vogue magazine and was later hired as an administrative assistant at a private equity firm in New York. In 2015, she left the financial sector to start a marketing agency called Degree 180. Degree 180's website featured a blog that gained notoriety for publishing progressive, anti-conservative, and anti-Trump content, the exact opposite of her current views. That all changed in 2016 when Owens launched socialautopsy.com, a website that aimed to expose individuals responsible for online harassment by publishing their identities. The project was widely condemned across the political spectrum, with both conservative and progressive voices expressing concerns over privacy and potential misuse. In retaliation, critics shared Owens' personal information online. Owens attributed the widespread criticism and retaliation efforts to two progressives who had attempted to convince Owens to abandon the project. While Owens was criticized by those who purportedly shared her beliefs, she received support from prominent figures associated with the far right. Owens publicly stated that this was the catalyst for her ideological shift, remarking, "I became a conservative overnight." In late 2016, she began expressing support for Donald Trump's presidential run. By 2017, Owens had completely flipped political sides, aggressively ramping up her online criticism of liberal ideology and policies through her YouTube channel. She further amplified her voice and newfound point of view to young conservatives through her role as communications director of Turning Point USA, a non-profit organization that advocates for conservative ideals on high school and college campuses nationwide. In 2019, Owens founded the Blexit movement, which encourages Black Americans to leave the Democratic Party. That same year, she launched the Candace Owens Show, a podcast on YouTube where she interviewed conservative figures. In 2019, she married George Farmer, a British citizen and the son of Lord Michael Farmer, a former treasurer of the Conservative Party. When the couple met in December 2018, George Farmer was chairman of Turning Point UK and later became CEO of Parler, a far-right social media platform. As her visibility grew, Owens also became involved in French far-right politics. She was invited to be the headline speaker at the Convention de la Droite in Paris in September 2019. The convention was organized by the associates of Marion Maréchal, the niece of Marine Le Pen, President Macron's political adversary. During her speech, Owens criticized President Macron, calling him a weak leader. Shortly after the event, Owens tagged Maréchal in a comment to an X post showing a video of the two speaking. In the near future, there will be a deeper alliance between France and the United States. Thank you at Marion Maréchal for widening my understanding of the challenges faced by France today. Maréchal replied favorably, thanking Owens for her courage. Owens' criticism of President Macron continued and increased after the 2022 Russian invasion of Ukraine. Over the years, Owens' network has included prominent conservative figures known for extreme or conspiratorial rhetoric, such as Charlie Kirk, Alex Jones, Nigel Farage, and even Kanye West. During Paris Fashion Week in the fall of 2022, Owens appeared with West wearing controversial White Lives Matter t-shirts, a slogan condemned by civil rights groups as a white supremacist response to the Black Lives Matter movement. West posted a photo of him and Owens wearing the shirts with the caption, "Everyone knows that Black Lives Matter was a scam. Now it's over. You're welcome." So, just a side thought, I guess, but I think it's wild. I'm not saying I understand what people mean by, slogans such as White Lives Matter being could be seen as inflammatory and white supremacist. But we're talking about Kanye West and Candace Owens. These are two black people wearing said shirt, and people are still saying, well, it's white supremacist. Around this time, West announced plans to buy Palmer's company. The deal collapsed shortly after Adidas ended its contract with West for making anti-Semitic comments. In 2021, Owens joined the Daily Wire, where she hosted her talk show Candace Owens until her departure in 2024. Owens left the Daily Wire in March 2024 following public clashes with co-founder Ben Shapiro over her increasingly anti-Semitic rhetoric. In the wake of the October 7 Hamas attacks on Israel, Owens voiced strong pro-Palestinian and anti-Israel sentiments. Her commentary escalated from political criticism to overt anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. On her talk show, Owens alleged that secret Jewish gangs commit horrific things in Hollywood and on social media. She repeated the long-debunked blood libel myth that Jewish people drink the blood of Christian children. These comments justifiably received widespread condemnation. It just sounds nuts. Following her departure from the Daily Wire, Owens did not slow down. In fact, she seized the opportunity to become even more extreme. In June 2024, she independently relaunched her talk show under the name Candace on YouTube. In September, she posted an interview with Kanye West, during which both claimed that Jewish people control the media. YouTube removed the video and suspended and demonetized her channel for violating hate speech policies. Despite this, Owens persisted in promoting conspiracy theories, including calling Nazi medical experimentation on Jewish people during the Holocaust bizarre propaganda. These actions led to the Australian government to deny her a visa in 2025, citing a risk that her presence could incite discord, and concluding that Australia's national interest is best served when Candace Owens is somewhere else. Despite the inflammatory and demonstrably false nature of many of her public statements, Owens' audience has continued to grow. As of September 2025, Owens has over 5.21 million subscribers on YouTube, and her videos have garnered millions of views. She has 7.2 million followers on X. Owens repeats the outlandish claim that Brigitte Macron was born a man on the Daily Wire precisely because she knew its shock value would boost her visibility. In March 2024, just prior to her departure from the Daily Wire, Owens began promoting the false claim that Mrs. Macron was born a man. On March 11, 2024, Owens published an episode of her Daily Wire podcast, Candace Owens, titled Insane. This is the biggest political scandal in human history, which reported on the Brigitte Macron conspiracy theory that was making its way through the courts in France. Owens was the first to bring this theory to the US media and to a global audience. That same day, defendants announced the video in an X post, repeating that it is the biggest scandal that has ever happened in politics in human history. Okay. So this is a post from Candace Owens on X. It says, March the 11th, 2024. Stop everything and watch this. Not a joke or an exaggeration to say that, barring political assassinations, this is likely the biggest scandal that has ever happened in politics in human history. And then we've got hashtag Jean-Michel Drogneau and a link to a YouTube video. Then underneath, she also says, I looked into this expecting it to be an insane conspiracy theory, and it is anything but. It took 3 years of research for the journalist to unpack this series. It would take 3 seconds for Macron to dispel these rumours, and yet they seem unable to. The implications are wild. Okay. Owens claimed she learned about this theory from a 2021 debunking story published by the Daily Mail. Okay, and there's a link in the footnote to that. Owens falsely claimed the article was recent despite it being published more than 3 years ago, likely to make it appear that she just happened upon the story rather than searching for a salacious conspiracy to increase viewership. Shockingly, Owens claimed there was no debunking whatsoever, but that is false. The article included multiple photos of Mrs. Macron as a child and informed that separate journalists met both Mrs. Macron's brother, Jean-Michel, and Mrs. Macron's late ex-husband, André-Louis Ozier. Owens admitted these facts. Wow. Okay. Oh. I can't read it because I need to. I need to subscribe, apparently. Okay, never mind. Okay, so the next day, Owens followed up with another defamatory ex-post stating that she would stake her entire professional reputation on the fact that Brigitte Macron is in fact a man. Okay, so yeah, March 12th. This episode is blowing up, so I just want to say, after looking into this, I would stake my entire professional reputation on the fact that Brigitte Macron is in fact a man. Any journalist or publication that is trying to dismiss this plausibility is immediately identifiable as establishment. I've never seen anything like this in my life. The implications here are terrifying. What she never seen in her life, but a transgender? I do not intend to let up on the story, and I am calling on other journalists to look into this explosive story and report accordingly. Okay, on March 13th, 2024, Owens released another episode of Candace Owens entitled Media Meltdown, France's First Lady Exposed, repeating and expanding on her false claims. From the start, Owens could not keep her story straight. For example, on Owens' 21st of March 2024 appearance on the nationally syndicated radio show, The Breakfast Club radio show, she said that the Macrons tried to sell to the press a fake photo which got debunked. It was actually Jean-Michel's daughter. She has never repeated this claim because it is demonstrably false. So let's have a look at the footnote. Okay, so there's another link. After Owens was dismissed from the Daily Wire on March 22nd, 2024, the outlet did the right thing and immediately removed Owens's March 11th and 13th episodes, but each remains available online on other platforms. Fired from the Daily Wire and faced with clear evidence debunking her claim, Owens continues to push the conspiracy, now from her own podcast. Despite the extensive and publicly available evidence confirming the truth about the Macrons' identities and history, Owens persisted in spreading her false and defamatory allegations. Even after her termination from the Daily Wire, reportedly due in part to her repeated dissemination of baseless conspiracy theories, Owens showed no sign of retracting or tempering her allegations. She continued promoting her preconceived narrative, undeterred by professional consequences or contradictory facts. Defendants launched Owens' independent podcast titled Candace on June 10, 2024. Knowing her false claims about the Macrons had caught fire in March, Owens seized the moment, recycling them starting the very day she premiered Candace. Defendants took to X, declaring Mrs. Macron was a man. Fueled by sensational claims, the show quickly gained attention, earning the second spot on Edison Research's list of top new podcasts for 2024. So we've got obviously a picture of the Macrons, and Candace says, a man. That's in response to the original poster saying, seriously, what the fuck is Emmanuel Macron married to? On June 12, 2024, Owens appeared on Piers Morgan Uncensored to push more false and defamatory claims about the Macrons. Claims even Piers Morgan, known for his provocative style, dismissed as absurd. Owens doubled down the next day by republishing clips from the interview, repeating her false allegations on the June 13th episode of Candace. Is on links, okay. Recognizing that her false claims about the Macrons were drawing significant attention, Owens escalated further. On June 17, 2024, defendants released an episode titled So Is Brigitte Macron a Man? To repeat the discredited allegations from Owens' March episodes that had since been deleted by the Daily Wire. Seeking to drive traffic to her new venture and expand her claims, Owens opened by warning that the Macrons were going to come for her life. She then repeated the categorically false claim that the Macrons had deployed the Secret Service to intimidate and detain journalists to hide the truth of Mrs. Macron's transition and identity theft. Finally, she linked these allegations to a broader, equally baseless conspiracy theory that the world is being run by a gang of satanic pedophiles masquerading as Jewish people. Projecting, Owens claimed the Macrons were not behaving in ways one does when you are telling the truth. She claimed that there are no photos from the first 30 years of Mrs. Macron's life, but contradicted herself just moments later by admitting that photos of a young Mrs. Macron had been released. She just does not believe they are real. The clicks kept coming, so Owens kept going, seizing every opportunity to promote her salacious claims. Defendants released another episode mentioning the conspiracy on June 26, 2024. On July 1, 2024, Owens repeated her false claims in an episode encouraging viewers to reject scientific findings in favor of following their gut. On July 7, 2024, Owens presented these false claims on The Jimmy Dore Show. Jimmy Dore is a stand-up comedian turned political commentator who regularly promotes conspiracy theories. Defendants went so far as to create and sell merchandise to promote these claims. On July 8, 2024, defendants posted a photo on X of Owens in a t-shirt showcasing a fake Time magazine Man of the Year cover featuring Mrs. Macron. The shirt sold out. I mean, if this isn't true, if this story about Brigitte Macron is not true, this is bullying. Owens went so far as to claim that the 2024 Olympic opening ceremony, a tribute to Greek mythology, was designed to honor Brigitte Macron because she is transgender. This claim is not only absurd, but self-defeating. Owens also insists Mrs. Macron's biological sex is a state secret, making such a tribute impossible even by her own logic. She then escalated her rhetoric, falsely alleging that the Macrons are part of a very small group of elite oligarchs who routinely practice homosexuality and pedophilia, believe in Baphomet, and worship a transgender deity that controls the world. This is yet another baseless, inherently implausible claim contradicted by public evidence and common sense. Owens bolstered this claim by reposting on X a takedown of the opening ceremony and Mrs. Macron by another provocative figure, Archbishop Vigano, who had just been excommunicated from the Catholic Church. Yet again, searching for the most controversial spin, Owens posted on X that Brigitte Macron is a transvestite, calling it a demonic state secret and falsely claiming that Mrs. Macron is a rapist. Owens used the conspicuous tag #ChristIsKing to garner even more attention. Continuing to capitalize on the attention of sensational figures and known liars, Owens published a post by Alex Jones, a notorious defamer who owes $1.5 billion to the families of the Sandy Hook shooting victims for his malicious lies, and repeated her allegations. Jones is one of the most unreliable sources imaginable. Owens stated that Brigitte Macron was born Jean-Michel Journoux. He lived as a man for about 30 years before transitioning to Brigitte. While he lived as a man, he fathered 3 children. Again, Owens tagged #ChristIsKing. Yet again, aligning with the most controversial figures, defendants brought on Andrew Tate, a self-proclaimed misogynist charged with rape and human trafficking. Owens proved that no amount of credible evidence would convince her to abandon her preconceived narrative when she platformed Tate's claim that the French election was rigged like the 2020 US election. Owens went further, claiming the Macrons are being blackmailed and they are being selected for these positions. She dismissed all critics by saying the Matrix is targeting her for exposing the supposed homosexuality and pedophilia taking place in the world. Right, on August 30th, 2024, Owens interviewed Broussard, the publisher of Defamatory by a document series on Mrs. Macron. Broussard became Owens's primary source, quite possibly her only source, for her future reporting. In the interview, Owens and Broussard agreed that the Macrons are perpetuating fraud, regarded Mrs. Macron's identity and President Macron's political independence and integrity. They further claimed that Mrs. Macron's nephew resembles President Macron and inferred that the Macrons' relationship was incestuous. Broussard directly accused Mrs. Macron of abuse of a minor, impersonation, and identity theft. Owens endorsed and adopted and expanded on these claims, linking them to her broader conspiracy theory involving an extensive network of satanic pedophiles. Every time Owens faced consequences for repeating these outrageous allegations, she refused to take responsibility and instead cast herself as the victim and blamed others. For example, on September 11th, 2024, defendants embedded the August 30th episode in an X post claiming that YouTube removed the video for exposing the media's complicity in covering up pedophilia, when the truth is that Owens did not abide by YouTube's content moderation policies, which are designed to guard against misinformation and hate speech. Sorry guys, some of these words they feel like a mouthful today because I think I've done like 5 or 6 hours of recording over the last 2 days with the Lively responses and the Jones responses. My mouth just feels a bit struggling. We will get through this. So the Macrons flatly debunked the conspiracy in a retraction demand to Owens, but she mocks her response, ignores the facts, and doubles down with even more reckless claims. The Macrons, through their counsel, sent a detailed retraction demand letter to Owens via email on December 3, 2024. The December retraction demand explained the falsity of Owens's defamatory statements and included an abundance of evidence that Mrs. Macron was born a woman named Brigitte Trogneux, that she was not a blood relative of President Macron, and that the Macrons were not being controlled or blackmailed by any group of people. Owens did not respond to the December 3rd email. Owens then repeatedly ignored multiple additional attempts by the Macrons to engage. The Macrons sent a follow-up email on December 18, 2024, which went unanswered. On January 8, 2025, the Macrons contacted Owens's former legal counsel to facilitate communication but received no response. Next, the Macrons attempted to personally serve the December retraction demand on January 9, 2025, but were first ignored, then blocked by Owens's counsel, who ultimately agreed to accept service by email. The December retraction demand explicitly denied each of Owens's claims and was presented evidence that conclusively disproved them. The December retraction demand reminded Owens that the very Daily Mail article she cited as support for her conspiracies told readers that the Courrier Picard, a daily newspaper in Amiens, France, Mrs. Macron's hometown, included Mrs. Macron's birth announcement. The birth announcement states that Brigitte Trogneux was born on April 13, 1953, and that her siblings Anne-Marie, Jean-Claude, Mary-Yvonne, Monique, and Jean-Michel Trogneux have great joy in announcing the arrival of their little sister Brigitte. And again, there's the birth announcement. Defendants knew this information, but Owens omitted it from her series precisely because it contradicted the preconceived narrative she intended to tell. This omission was deliberate and is evidence of actual malice, and I don't disagree with that. The December retraction demand reminded Owens that in addition to a First Communion photo and family photo, there are additional publicly available photos of Mrs. Macron as a child. In one such photo, Mrs. Macron is playing in a garden as a young girl. This photo was mentioned in the 2021 Daily Mail debunking article and the December retraction demand, but Owens never shared it with her viewers because it does not fit her preconceived narrative. And there are those photos. The December retraction demand reminded Owens that Mrs. Macron's marriage to André Louis Ozier and his existence were well documented. The most obvious proof of his existence is the 3 children he fathered with Mrs. Macron, all of whom have acknowledged him as their father and adopted his last name. Initially, Owens falsely stated that there were no publicly available photos of Mr. Ozier. The December retraction demand reminded Owens that a publicly available photo exists of Mr. Ozier from his wedding to Mrs. Macron. Since then, Owens has found at least one additional photo through her relationship with Xavier Boussard. To discredit this photo, Owens initially claimed that the subjects were not Mr. Ozier and Mrs. Macron, but Jean-Louis Ozier with his first wife, Susan Spray. The December retraction demand reminded Owens that Jean-Louis debunked this claim, stating, "When André Louis got married, I was 8 years older and working in Germany. There may be a slight family resemblance, but that's not to say we are the same person." Indeed, Jean-Louis has testified in French court that the photo is not of him and won a defamation claim against Ray and Roy on that basis. When Owens was confronted with this information, she changed her theory, but rather than accept this photo for what it is, an image of Mrs. Macron from her marriage to Mr. Ozier, Owens concocted a new story. She changed course in the series to claim that Mr. Ozier is in the photo, but that Mrs. Macron is not. Instead, Owens claimed that it was another woman named Brigitte Drogneux, and that Mrs. Macron refused to verify that the image was of her. Another lie. Owens initially told her audience that no journalist could find Mr. Ozier, but this is plainly false. The December retraction demand reminded Owens that another Daily Mail debunking article explained that reporters for several outlets, including the Mail, tracked Andre Louis down to Lille several years ago. But he declined to comment. That aligns with his family's statements that he was a very private man. Okay, and there's a link to that article. The December retraction demand stated that Mr. Ozier passed away on December 24th, 2019. His and Mrs. Macron's daughter, Tiffany, spoke about his death afterward and noted that he was buried in the strictest privacy and that he was a nonconformist who valued his anonymity more than anything. Tiffany ended by stating he must be respected. I hope I'm not getting these names wrong. In her earlier reporting, Owens distorted these words and the family's request for privacy into a warning, a threat almost, not to look any further. In the series, after being confronted with proof of Mr. Ozier's existence through his documented death and funeral, she again changed course and distorted the Ozier family's desire for privacy into a plot to cover up wrongdoing. The December retraction demand also informed Owens that Jean-Michel Drogneux is alive and well in Amiens. Emmanuel Anison, a journalist for L'Aube magazine, reported having contact with him in Amiens in September 2023. This too was included in the Daily Mail's 2024 debunking article. In fact, Mrs. Anison wrote an entire book disproving the disinformation campaign surrounding Mrs. Macron. Shockingly, Owens cites Mrs. Anison's book in the series but fails to tell her viewers it completely disproves her central thesis. The December retraction demand provided evidence that Jean-Michel has recently appeared in public. He attended President Macron's investitures in 2017 and 2022, and the December retraction demand provided links to publicly available videos from those events. Not only was Jean-Michel present, but also in the same frame as Mrs. Macron, conclusive evidence that debunks Owens' demonstrably false claims. Okay, so this is a 2027 investiture. So this guy here on this bottom picture, this guy on the left is Jean-Michel. And at the front here in blue with her hair up is Brigitte Macron. And again, the guy is literally in the same frame as Brigitte Macron. Okay. The December retraction demand informed Owens that Jean-Michel's defamation claims against Ray and Roy prove his existence and that he is not Mrs. Macron. At Ray and Roy's June 19, 2024 trial, Jean-Michel's attorney presented both Mrs. Macron's and Jean-Michel's electoral cards to the court, demonstrating that they had both voted in the European elections on June 9, 2024, in different towns. As a result of that trial, Ray and Roy were ordered to pay Jean-Michel €5,000 in civil damages. This information is also publicly available, but Owens has never informed her audience of these facts, which disprove her claim. The December retraction demand explicitly stated that Mrs. Macron is the biological mother of her 3 children, proving that she was born as a woman and has not engaged in identity theft. In her earlier reporting, Owens claimed that Mrs. Macron fathered her 3 children with Brigitte Proba-Ozier, whom she falsely claimed was a niece of Jean-Louis Ozier, the uncle of Mrs. Macron's late ex-husband. She accused Jean-Louis of forging the children's birth certificates to hide Mrs. Macron's secret. This is the same Jean-Louis who she claimed was in the wedding photo of Mrs. Macron and her first husband, and who has successfully sued Ray and Roy for defamation. Owens did not repeat these claims in the series, but has never retracted the prior false claims. Further, Owens initially claimed that the photo of Mrs. Macron, in which she is described as a 36-year-old teacher named Brigitte Ozier, is not actually of her, but rather of the fictitious Brigitte Proba-Ozier. In doing so, Owens recklessly disregarded the facts that the photographed woman in this picture, 1, had the same name as Mrs. Macron did at the time, 2, had the same occupation that Mrs. Macron had at the age of 36, and 3, bears a striking resemblance to a younger version of Mrs. Macron. Owens later admitted that this was false, but never removed the episodes including this false claim. When Owens realized her claims about Mrs. Macron's children, i.e. that she had fathered her children with the fictitious Brigitte Proba-Ozier, could not possibly be true, she dropped them, offering no alternative explanation, just a gaping hole. She counted on her audience being too captivated or too unquestioning to notice the gap, let alone call her out on it. The reason is clear. Any theory that claims Mrs. Macron is not the mother of her children recklessly disregards the striking resemblance between her and her daughters. And that's Brigitte Macron with her daughters. The December retraction demand reminded Owens that Mrs. Macron, Jean-Michel and Jean-Louis, along with his wife Catherine, have sued the originators of this theory, Ray and Roy, for defamation. On December 12, 2024, Ray and Roy were found guilty of defamation and ordered to pay damages to Mrs. Macron and Jean-Michel. Before that, the women were found guilty and fined for lying about Jean-Louis and Catherine. Owens disregarded this credible evidence because it contradicted her preconceived narrative. Owens responds with ridicule and doubles down. On January 10, 2025, defendants posted on X that the Macrons had sent Owens a legal letter. That post demonstrated Owens's loose relationship with the truth. In her X post, Owens claimed that in mid-November she made contact with a journalist claiming to have a trove of evidence to support the claim that the First Lady of France lived as a man named Jean-Michel Journoud before becoming and transitioning to Brigitte. Owens crafted the post to suggest that she had a new source, but the journalist was actually Poussard, whom she had already met and interviewed. Owens claimed that just 10 days after their initial correspondence, the Macrons sent her a legal letter, proving that Owens saw and ignored the Macrons' initial outreach in early December. Owens claimed the Macrons demanded she not publicize the letter. In fact, the letter had only a heading stating that it was not for publication or attribution, a far cry from the demand she claimed. Most troubling, Owens promised she would publicise the December retraction demand, but she never did. And the reason is clear. The 33-page December retraction demand conclusively debunked Owens's claims and exposed her lies. Owens knows a media firestorm when she sees one. Sensing an opportunity to amplify her claims and attract more attention, she falsely asserted that Tucker Carlson, a high-profile political commentator, was named in the December retraction demand. Defendants tagged Carlson on X, banking on the controversy to draw him in and further spread Owens's false narrative. So there was an X post dated January 10th, 2025. Mentioned in this letter are Tucker Carlson, and it looks like it's Andrew Tate, Archbishop Vigano, and Alex Jones, Jimmy Dore, and many others. Once again, framing herself as a victim in defendant's January 10th, 2025 episode of Candace, Owens claimed the Macrons attempted to personally serve her with the December retraction demand to intimidate and terrify her. However, she neglected to tell her viewers that in fact the Macrons only resorted to personal service after she ignored multiple emails. Owens claimed the Macrons strenuously requested that she not publicise the December retraction demand, and that the letter said all over it that it was not to be shared. At best, gross exaggeration. The letter contained only a standard first-page heading, confidential, not for publication or attribution. Owens continued to refuse to meaningfully engage with the December retraction demand. Instead, she intentionally led her audience to believe that the Macrons refused to say whether Mrs. Macron was born a woman, or address Owens's other claims. But Owens knew that the December retraction demand addressed each of her claims and proved them to be false. Owens cherry-picked portions of the December retraction demand to read to her audience, but did not present the evidence against her claims that it contained because it contradicted her preconceived narrative. Instead, Owen told her viewers that she had evidence disproving portions of the December retraction demand, but she was not going to tell you that today. Spoiler, she never presented it. I'm here for some of the snark. Owens leveraged the December retraction demand to generate buzz and build anticipation for her upcoming episodes. Again, Owens implied she had a new source with a trove of evidence. That source was Broussard, whom she had already presented to her audience. She then falsely claimed that the timing of the December retraction demand demonstrated the communications of the journalist are being monitored, but admitted she had no evidence to support this. Rather than reconsider her false claims, Owens doubled down, blaming Macrons for her content being removed from YouTube and vowing not to retract what she deems to be the truth. On January 11th, 2025, defendants posted on X that all correspondence between our legal teams will be available for the public to read. Owens has not lived up to this promise because she knows the legal correspondence contradicts her false claims. As with her other false allegations, she promised strong evidence that the First Communion photo was not Mrs. Macron, but never delivered it. She also pretended the Macrons had definitively denied her claims, ignoring the clear contradictory evidence they already provided. She also pretended that the Macrons had not definitively denied her claims, ignoring the clear contradictory evidence they had already provided. Defendants continued to mock the Macrons' attempt to correct the record, demonstrating that Owens was not interested in the truth. She would rather make salacious and false claims to boost her revenue. For example, defendants reposted and expanded on a post from Alexander Dugin, a far-right Russian philosopher and controversial figure, featuring Mrs. Macron as a Neanderthal and wondering if he too would be sent a retraction demand. Okay. On January 11th, 2025, defendants reposted on X the false assertion that the December retraction demand admitted that Mrs. Macron raped President Macron. This was blatantly false and Owens knew it. The truth was that the December retraction demand pointedly denied that the president was statutorily raped. On January 12th, 2025, December. It's such a lot. There's a lot of stuff in this, right, which is quite shocking. Like I say, I hadn't watched Candace Owens and I hadn't really followed this at all, this kind of story. But some of the suggestions and allegations levelled at the Macrons are insane. Whether they're true or false, they are just absolutely insane. Wild claims. Okay. On January 12th, 2025, defendants again reposted another claim that the December retraction demand admitted that Mrs. Macron raped President Macron and agreed it was indeed the most stunning admission from the letter. Owens repeated this claim on defendant's January 13th, 2025 episode. Again, Owens knew these statements were false when she made them, but the truth did not matter when there were followers to be gained. Owens's response to the December retraction demand was picked up by other media outlets who understood from Owens that the Macrons had not provided any denials or evidence against her false claims, including that the Macrons were lying about Mrs. Macron's biological sex, just as Owens intended. Those same outlets described Owens as doubling down on all her claims. Defendants prioritized profit over truth and used the December retraction demand as fuel for even more content. On January 13th, 2025, defendants posted on X that Owens was sharing her legal response to the Macrons, one that she had not yet sent to them. In defendant's January 13th, 2025 episode, Owens promised to upload her entire response to a locals page. Yet again, she did not follow through. At that point, Owens decided to escalate her claims further. In that same episode, Owens falsely implied that the Macrons were responsible for the death of a journalist investigating them. I remember reading about this. Owens claimed that the Macrons have a dark side, and one by one these independent journalists and researchers begin to suffer. Noting that this is a true story, Owens told her audience about Isabella Ferreira, who was investigating the Macrons' relationship and landed upon something bigger. And 2 weeks later, this Isabella Ferreira is found dead. What's happening there is obviously in the Lively case, we've got Isabella Ferrer. And I'm having a hard time here switching my brain from not saying Isabella Ferrer. This is Isabella Ferreira. The authorities ruled Ferreira's death a suicide, but Owens claimed that it was almost impossible. The intended, unavoidable, and false implication is that Ferreira was killed for investigating the Macrons. Owens repeated that the December retraction demand did not deny that Brigitte is trans or explicitly state that Brigitte Macron was born a biological woman. This is false. The December retraction demand explicitly stated that the Macrons were not concealing Mrs. Macron's biological sex and that she was born Brigitte Trogneux, a woman. Owens told the Macrons to bring this lawsuit. She continued, "Don't even waste your money on getting a courier to file. I'll file it for you. I'll run down to the courthouse and I'll file the lawsuit for you." Owens claimed, "I might even cover your legal expenses." Owens displayed her ill will towards the Macrons, stating, "I am disgusted by your relationship. You make me sick, Brigitte." On January 16th, 2025, several days after publicly referencing its content, Owens finally sent a response to the December retraction demand to the Macrons Council. Rather than retract her demonstrably false statements, Owens defiantly reaffirmed them. She provided no evidence or justification to support her defamatory claims. Instead, she attempted to trivialize the matter by insisting that the Macrons reframed their denials as responses to 21 questions, an apparent effort to convert her baseless investigation into a publicity stunt. Owens then misled her audience by claiming that because she had posed these questions, the Macrons could never prove actual malice. She failed to disclose, however, that the Macrons had already addressed the substance of her questions within the December retraction demand. Owens releases an 8-part series pushing the conspiracy, packed with false and defamatory claims she knows are blatantly false. On January 31st, 2025, defendants premiered the series. The series began with an introductory episode followed by 6 chapters, and concluded with an epilogue. Throughout the series, Owens made the false and defamatory allegations that Mrs. Macron, born a man, stole another person's identity to become Brigitte. Mrs. Macron and President Macron are blood relatives involved in incest. President Macron was chosen to be the President of France as part of MK Ultra, or a similar mind control program, and Mrs. Macron and President Macron are committing forgery, fraud, and abuses of power to cover up these facts. These claims are demonstrably false, and Owens knew it when she published them. Okay. How many episodes was it? Okay, so it's like 8-part. Alright, okay. Alright. An introduction. January 31st, 2025. The first installment, titled An Introduction, premiered on January 31st, 2025. Defendants announced the introductory episode on X. The episode can be found on CandaceOwens.com, YouTube, Spotify, Audible, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Music. A transcript is available on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Podscribe. Okay, and that's her announcement post of the series. Just before the premiere of the introduction, Owens claimed that her website was attacked by a state-level actor to prevent its publication. The implication was that the Macrons were trying to prevent the series from premiering. Owens told readers she would provide proof, but she never did. Notwithstanding the lack of proof, Owens repeated these false claims. Throughout the introduction, Owens made the overarching false claim that the Macrons are surrounded by a syndicate of criminals that helps them conceal their secrets, which proves they themselves must be criminals. Owens made the following specific defamatory claims. Brigitte Macron's alleged brother, who I believe Brigitte Macron is. And guys, by the way, you should know that there is this strange case of what happens to every journalist who tries to touch a story. First and foremost, Isabella Pereira. I think I mentioned this on a past episode. People who began prodding into the story as an independent journalist happened upon some huge information pertaining to the relationship of Emmanuel Macron and Brigitte. By then, she was found dead. She was found dead floating in a river, and her friends said that she didn't kill herself, but the media said that she most definitely did. There have been people who have been so concerned about our safety and stuff. We did up on security for this time being after getting the letter from Macron, and because of the things that we know about their network and things that are happening, Like I said, to every journalist that has tried to get this out, we are taking it seriously, but also know that at the end of the day, it's not in the security's hands. It's in God's hands. So we just ask everyone, whether you believe it or not, to just pray. The introduction set the tone for the series and left no doubt that Owens intended to portray the Macrons as liars and criminals. She told viewers that the Macrons are in fact lying to the public about Brigitte Macron's past identity, and they would not believe Mrs. Macron was a woman by the time the series concluded. She promised her viewers that the series would get more sensational as it went on, noting the introduction was the tip of the iceberg, and the Macrons were involved in paedophilia, pederasty, incest, lies, and trying to thug people via courts. Owens juxtaposed her claims of criminal activity alongside insinuations of foul play in the case of Isabella Pereira, to intentionally imply that the Macrons were involved in Pereira's death, a baseless and defamatory accusation. Owens bolstered and escalated the false claims with concern for her own safety, and false accusations of the Macrons weaponized in state institutions to silence critics. Owens solidified her claims of abuses of power and criminal activity by stating that Brigitte Macron and Emmanuel Macron came from a circle, a syndicate of real power, old money power. Owens painted herself as the victim for her morally superior efforts to expose what's happening with Brigitte Macron. She claimed that she was the victim of defamation by the media, which is protecting state criminals such as the Macrons. On February 3, 2025, after Owens escalated her claims in an introduction, she made good on her promise to release a series on the Macrons. The Macrons sent the February retraction demand, this time addressing Owens's latest false and defamatory allegations. The Macrons told Owens that her insinuation that they were involved in the death of Pereira was entirely false. Again, they told Owens that they had not engaged in any criminal behavior. And again, they told Owens that there was no secret group controlling or blackmailing them with evidence of Mrs. Macron being born a man. Owens never wrote back, but instead used the demand as content for her series. Owens chose to publicly deliver her reply to the Macrons' February retraction demand in the next episode of the series, rather than issue a direct reply to the Macrons, further evidence that she had prioritized publicity over truth. Unsurprisingly, her response was to once again double down on her knowingly false and defamatory claims. Okay. So, episode 1, Gaslighting the Public. On February 4th, 2025, defendants released the next episode of the series titled Episode 1, Gaslighting the Public. Defendants announced the release of Episode 1 on X. The episode can be found on CandaceOwens.com, YouTube, etc., etc. Episode 1 was premised on Owens' false claims that the Macrons had manipulated and controlled the media, even resorting to outright lies and fraud, to conceal their past and the nature of their relationship. During Episode 1, Owens made the following specific false and defamatory claims. I literally told you that every journalist that tries to touch this story, something happens to. Okay, and it is a fact that Isabella Pereira was working on the story, had messaged according to her friends saying that she had a bombshell about Emmanuel Macron, and appreciate the French press had reported on this. And then she was found dead floating in a river, okay, or a pond, whatever it was. And the public said that she had drowned, and her friends said that she was not suicidal. And the public, the press, said that she had maybe taken some pills. I don't remember. There's strong allegations to not remember when you're reporting on them. Just as an observation. Like I said, every journalist that tries to get this out, yes, that is not a lie, that is the truth. We've upped our security because, and we were responding to the chat, people saying get yourself some good security. And of course, when you have people walking around your property and you have young children and you understand the extent of the stakes that are in this, getting and upping on your security, that is my right. I believe Brigitte Macron was born a biological male, okay? And then transitioned into a female. That is my belief. I don't know how many times I can say it. And you will never, ever, ever get me to transform my opinion that you were groomed by the person you eventually married in 2007, Brigitte Macron. I believe she's a man. Owens began episode 1 by doubling down on the claims she made in the introduction episode about Pereira and her own safety in response to the February retraction demand. Again, these statements unmistakably and intentionally implied criminal culpability on the part of the Macrons and are demonstrably false. Owens supported these claims of violence and criminality with statements that the Macrons are surrounded by criminals, paedophiles, and an extraordinary syndicate. She claimed that they purposefully hire employees who will break you down and use tactics of blackmail and coercion. These claims are false. The Macrons were not involved in the death of Pereira, nor would they make any attempt to direct violence against Owens. Turning to focus on the crux of her false theory, Owens detailed Mrs. Macron's life for viewers with an eye toward supporting her baseless claim that Mrs. Macron was born a man. Owens deliberately emphasized the word allegedly before recounting details of Mrs. Macron's life to indicate Owens's intent to debunk them. Again, Owens falsely claimed that the December retraction demand failed to address whether or not Brigitte Macron was a man. Owens attempted to bolster her false claim based on Mrs. Macron's clothing. Owens pointed out that Mrs. Macron is dressed by someone, the artistic director of Louis Vuitton's women's collection, whom Owens describes as the main promoter of transgenderism and androgyny in the fashion world, and who specializes in transgenderism. Owens suggested that this is evidence that Mrs. Macron must be transgender, ignoring the obvious truth that many women appreciate and wear Louis Vuitton. This manufactured meaning is a telling example of the quality of Owens's evidence. Most shockingly, Owens outright lied about the December retraction demand to support her false claims of statutory rape and pedophilia. Twisting facts to fit her preconceived narrative, Owens stated that the December retraction demand was an admission that it was statutory rape. This assertion is factually and legally incorrect and further republishes the false allegation of criminal conduct. Owens told the Macrons that no amount of evidence will ever get her to transform her opinion, that President Macron was groomed by Mrs. Macron and that Mrs. Macron was born a man. This flatly refutes her claims that her goal is to inform her audience of the facts. Episode 2, An Inaccessible Past. On February 5th, 2025, defendants released the next episode of the series titled Episode 2, An Inaccessible Past. Defendants announced the episode on X. Episodes can be found on multiple platforms. Episode 2 was premised on Owens's false claims that both President and Mrs. Macron have intentionally made it impossible for the media to uncover their past, thereby hiding the secrets of their identities and relationship. During episode 2, Owens made the following specific, false and defamatory claim. He turned to his wife to know what to answer about his sister. I don't know how you guys are feeling right now, but I'm starting to get a little icky feeling. It's all starting to feel a bit, I don't know, incestuous to me. in a calculated move to mislead viewers into thinking her false claims had multitudes of real evidence behind them. Owens began episode 2 by telling her audience that she did not even cover all of the paedophile stories in Mrs. Macron's past. Throughout episode 2, Owens remained committed to her preconceived narrative that Mrs. Macron was born a man, interpreting all information as further confirmation. She again highlighted Mrs. Macron's clothing as evidence she transitioned, stating that she wore a lot of scarves as a teacher, and the only plausible explanation was that they were meant to hide signs of feminization surgery. Owens based her theory that Mrs. Macron is her brother, Jean-Michel, on the family photo from her childhood. Owens stated that Mrs. Macron was not the child on the mother's lap, but really the young boy to the left. Owens bolstered this false claim with the equally false evidence that, up until the release of the family photo, Jean-Michel was completely unaccounted for as a member of Mrs. Macron's family. Owens reinforced her preconceived narrative by lying to her viewers about additional photos from Mrs. Macron's childhood. First, she told her audience that the biographical documentary Brigitte Macron, un roman français by Virginie Lienhardt only contained 2 photos from Mrs. Macron's childhood when it contained more. Second, Owens claimed that she was presenting a collage, actually, of all the photos in the documentary, even though she knowingly omitted many images in the documentary. Third, moving the goalposts after being confronted with contradictory evidence, Owens walked back her claim that the First Communion photo was recolorized, but maintained it was still not of Mrs. Macron. Fourth, Owens falsely claimed that Mrs. Macron would not state she was in the First Communion photo. Towards the end of episode 2, Owens turned her gaze towards President Macron to begin ceding her eventual claim that he is the product of MKUltra or a similar government mind control program. MKUltra was a secret CIA program that conducted human experiments to develop mind control techniques using drugs, psychological manipulation, and torture. To encourage suspicion, Owens characterized President Macron's childhood as a black hole with very little information available. She suggested that his upbringing may be linked to a clandestine government plot because his father was a psychiatrist and his mother was a pediatrician. Owens referenced the book Chaos about the CIA's MKUltra program and told its viewers that its contents were relevant as we go along with the series, learning about some government programs which involved a lot of psychiatrists. It all just kind of fits in. Through these statements, Owens promoted the false and defamatory insinuation that President Macron's family background, childhood, and professional rise are not only suspicious but also orchestrated by covert mind control efforts. This claim is demonstrably false. President Macron has neither participated in nor is he the product of any government mind control programs. There is no evidence to support this outlandish claim. Owens knew this claim was false when she made it. Owens also introduced her false claim that the Macrons are committing incest. Specifically, she distorted President Macron's demeanor during a media interaction to claim, "It's all starting to feel a bit, I don't know, incestuous to me." Owens made it clear that this was a false fact by presenting a side-by-side image of Mrs. Macron's supposed to be nephew Jean-Jacques and President Macron in an effort to convince viewers of an apparent resemblance between the two. Jean-Jacques is the biological son of Mrs. Macron's brother, Jean-Michel Trogneux. Owens intentionally implied that the image was proof President and Mrs. Macron were blood relatives. This claim is demonstrably false. The Macrons are not blood relatives. Owens knew this claim was baseless when she said it. The Macrons explicitly told her they were not blood relatives in the December retraction demand. I'm going to do this part of this subsection, the episode 3 subsection, and then I'm going to kind of cut it there, and I'll do another episode, maybe another 2, because we are only 61 pages into this, and I've been recording this for nearly 2 hours now, so it's going to be far too long otherwise. I was expecting 3 or 4 hours, but this is clearly going to take quite a bit longer. Okay, so I'll do this bit and then I'll leave it here and do a second episode, which I will probably air tomorrow then. And then if I need to do a further episode, I will air that on Monday. Okay, on February 7th, 2025, Defendants premiered the next episode of the series entitled Episode 3, One Coincidence Too Many. Defendants announced the episode on X. There is posted in several places, blah, blah, blah. Episode 3 was premised on Owens' false claims that any coincidences in Macron's lives should be viewed as evidence in support of her theory. Among other things, Owens discussed President Macron's relationship with his grandmother, his parents' professions, and Mrs. Macron's first husband, André Louis. During episode 3, Owens made the following specific, false and defamatory claims. We showed you the side-by-side of current President Emmanuel Macron and a person who was supposed to be Brigitte's nephew, his wife's nephew. But these two people who are not supposed to be in any way related look way too much alike. There is no conspiracy here. The MKUltra was real. The government was obsessed with all of these different programs. Really, the main point of them, trying to condition the brain, trying to brainwash people, sometimes through isolation, which it sounds like Emmanuel Macron spent a ton of time isolated throughout his childhood. I mean, he's acknowledging that he lived through books, and his friends are acknowledging, or should be friends, are acknowledging that he was kind of a loner and on his own. So they would experiment psychologically through isolation, through drugs, LSD, drugging people to see if they could get them to commit crimes or to commit other acts unwittingly, essentially trying to establish a Manchurian candidate. So we don't know just how global that program went. We don't know every element of that program. And one element of that program was, of course, sexual perversions, like committing a sexual assault in order to then establish how it impacts somebody's psyche. Truly evil stuff. Okay, now earlier I told you that Macron's alleged biological parents you see here up on the screen, had some interesting jobs just off the bat. His father, Jean-Michel Macron, was a psychiatrist. And yes, of course, we know for a fact that psychiatrists have done some evil things, some very evil things throughout the years. I'm trying to keep an open mind, but I do find, just throwaway claims like that. Well, the father was a psychiatrist, and some psychiatrists have been evil. That's just a really bizarre claim to make. There have been people from all kinds of professions who have been evil. And I mean, she's saying nothing else other than his father was a psychiatrist, and then adding some psychiatrists have been evil. How does that prove that President Macron's father was evil? Statements like that, this is where I do have some issues with Candace Owens' content. Not all of it, but that just seems like a ridiculous statement. What really happened to André Louis, who was cremated very quickly, even though his daughter says he was buried? What really happened to André Louis? Did he actually die? Did he escape with the assistance of Élysée Palace? Did he try to escape, but the Élysée Palace intervened? Owens opened episode 3 with one of her most outrageous fabrications, the incest claim. She displayed the side-by-side photo of President Macron and Brigitte Macron's nephew, telling her audience these two people who are not supposed to be in any way related look way too much alike. It was a clear and calculated attempt to convince viewers that the Macrons are blood relatives, and that they committed incest. Owens knew that the claim was false, but it didn't matter. She recognized the power of exploiting her audience's conspiratorial thinking to boost attention, deepen loyalty, and drive profits. She then pivoted to another familiar tactic, casting doubt on photos of Mrs. Macron to support her broader lie that the Macrons are hiding Brigitte's identity. This time, she targeted a wedding photo of Mrs. Macron and her late husband, André Louis Ozier, saying that the bride does not look like Mrs. Macron and asking who is this person in the photo. Owens posed the question despite acknowledging the existence of a marriage certificate confirming the wedding of Mrs. Macron and Mr. Ozier, and listing the best man as Mrs. Macron's brother, Jean-Michel. Still, Owens kept pushing. She falsely claimed that Mrs. Macron had refused to confirm she was the woman in the wedding photo, even though the December retraction demand explicitly identified the woman as Mrs. Macron and noted the photo as one of many photos documenting her life as a woman. With her audience growing, so did Owens's distortions. She cast suspicion on the death of André Louis Ozier, calling the timing remarkably convenient and implying that the Macrons were lying about the circumstances. She asked whether he was cremated too quickly and floated the idea that either his death was faked or he was silenced by the Élysée Palace. Did he actually die? She asked. Did he escape with the assistance of the Élysée Palace? Did he try to escape, but the Élysée Palace intervened? God. Well, I mean, I don't like people going after people who are not here, is what I'll say. I don't, that's not a good look at all for me. Then came the next escalation. Owens involved MK Ultra. She claimed President Macron's grandmother died on April 13th, a date she noted also marks Mrs. Macron's birthday and the start of CIA MK program, suggesting the connection was not a coincidence but a conspiracy. She alleged that President Macron was subjected to isolation as a child to become a Manchurian candidate, and claimed the program included sexual perversions such as assault to impact somebody's psyche. Not stopping there, Owens went after President Macron's parents, implying that their professions were suspicious and asserting without evidence, we know for a fact that psychiatrists have done some evil things. She capped off the tirade by dragging Jeffrey Epstein into the mix, saying there is an Epstein connection in this story. We just haven't gotten to it yet. It's all connected. Owens folded President Macron's mother into her fabricated narrative by focusing on her professional work with intersex individuals. Owens twisted Dr. Noguer role, providing medical care and support to intersex patients in France, into supposed proof that the Macron family was well versed in identity transformation and therefore part of a coordinated effort to conceal Mrs. Macron's biological sex. The leap is illogical and baseless. There is no connection between Dr. Noguer's work and her daughter-in-law's identity. and Owens ignored the fundamental distinction between being intersex and being transgender. Still, without a shred of supporting evidence, Owens falsely claimed the Macrons kept this quiet when they got married, deliberately misleading her audience to serve as a narrative she knew was false. And I guess one thing I would say, because I have watched Candace Owens, especially when she was working with Daily Wire, and she would, do these kind of or Turning Point even, and do these kind of college campus type question and answer sessions, and people would be saying, well, you know, why can't I be transgender? Not everyone's born with the right parts, and they put forward a question like that, clearly sort of saying, well, trans people exist because intersex people exist, and frustratingly, this is what frustrates it for me is in that context, in the previous context where someone would use intersex people, the existence of intersex people as evidence of the existence of transgenders, Candace Owens would be like the first person to really push back and say, hold on, they're not the same thing. Because they're not. But it is irritating me a little here because this is not the part I kind of read in depth, but it's a bit irritating to sort of see her conflate the two issues here in this situation. But that's just my kind of thoughts and feelings. Okay, I am going to stop here and I will do another episode and do a premiere with it tomorrow. At the same time, I think. Same time. So we will continue this. I'm finding this absolutely fascinating. And, it's interesting to see the Macrons' side of the story and all the contradictions and everything. So the bits that were missing from Candace Owens's sort of videos and her reporting on this. So I will see you guys tomorrow. Thank you for sticking with this. It seems a very, very, very long complaint. The ones we've been dealing with in the Lively case, they've been sort of 100, 130 pages or so. This is double that. So it's not something I thought if it was 4 hours, I would have carried on and just got through it in one. But it is far too much, and I don't want to rush through it either. I do want to read it, sorry, understand it, and maybe say a few points and have a conversation around some of the stuff. All right, guys, we will be back tomorrow for the part 2 of this.